How did the thought get born?
The more I've learned about Panathēnea, the more I think it's like the perfect historic treasure. You have to accept that a bunch of your early attempts will blow up.
So Lars, 2,500 years after the original Panathēnea,
Yes.
A Danish innovator living in Greece, being married with a Greek wife, with a Greek lady,
Yes.
imagines to restart this amazing tradition, which was, the first festival basically. And
The original startup conference.
exactly,
Panathēnea,
exactly.
yes.
How did this come about? How did the thought get born?
I mean, look, it was a long journey. Like, we're angel investors. My Greek goddess wife and I are angel investors, and we came to Greece on a whim during the pandemic, and we were blown away with how much startup activity has arisen, honestly, out of the crises. Like, not that I would wish an economic crisis on any country, but since it happened, I think Greece did an incredible job turning it into something, a startup community, a change in mentality. We started investing when we came here 4 years ago, even though we came with the expectation of there being no startups. And then we thought, how can we help this young ecosystem grow even faster? Like, I think already it's the fastest growing ecosystem in Europe, but can we help keep that going and even accelerate it? And then we traveled around Lisbon, Helsinki, and we realized that if an emerging ecosystem manages to host a big international innovation festival, it can dramatically accelerate the growth of that ecosystem. In fact, if you look at Lisbon, similar sized city, similar sized country, it has a bigger ecosystem. And I think Web Summit,
Yes.
Portuguese government paid a bunch of money for an Irish existing conference to move. I think that's really the one thing they've done that Athens hasn't done yet. Let me take that back, that we have only just started during this year, right? And we spent a bunch of time trying to see, could we do a similar thing? Could we grab an existing innovation festival and move it to Athens? We failed at that, thankfully, because now we get to build this much better thing. And it was, I remember the moment on a little charter boat with my uncle, who's a very famous classical scholar, and I think Phil Helene, like myself, from Denmark. We're on the boat, Chat GPT had just launched, and we're talking about what should we have, what kind of things should we build? And then we had this conversation that the Olympic Games, biggest, most important sporting festival in the world, is a modern version of the most popular ancient Greek sporting festival. So we dialed up Chatty, and we were like, hey, Chatty. My uncle was laughing because he could have answered it just as easily, right? But we're like, hey, Chatty, was there any other popular festivals on the ancient calendar that we could reimagine into a modern festival of innovation, and ideally in both tech and culture? We'll talk about this in a second. And Chatty was like, what a great idea, Lars, you're so nice. And she told me about Panathēnea. I was probably the only person there who had never heard of this before. She told me about Panathēnea, and the more I've learned about Panathēnea, the more I think it's like the perfect historic treasure of like infinite value to an innovation ecosystem. And I think, and this is after now having worked on it for all of 5 months with this incredible young team.
Yep.
I mean, you're good friends with Lefteris, our 23-year-old CEO, right? And the more I work with them on it, the more I think that Greece has the potential to build certainly Europe's, if not the world's, best innovation festival by combining these two super simple ideas. We reimagine the ancient Panathēnea, and we build it with the most talented Greek students and new grads. And I think already this year, like a small affair, 2-3 days, 2,000-3,000 people, but like the vibe here, the energy,
It's amazing.
it is so youthful. And it's so, I mean, I have goosebumps because now we're on the second day and it's gone beyond anyone's expectations because it's the right team, it's the right idea, and it's the right time in the history of your beautiful country to bring this back.
That's very true. And what is amazing, I think, in this festival is that you see people from all around the world, amazing innovators and businessmen and artists and people from very different spectrum of activity, and they're so open. It's not like they're they don't have big egos. They're very ready to discuss with people around them of how did they succeed, what are their next step, and that is amazing. And by that, what do you think is the mission of Panathēnea, and how would you like to see it in like 5 or 10 years? What's the best?
It's a super good question. Look, let me tell you how I think of ancient Panathēnea.
Yeah.
Because then you'll immediately get the answer to your question. So ancient Panathēnea, which started, like you said, 2,500 years ago, but it actually lasted for 1,000 years. Wow. And it was from 500 BC to like 400 AD, and it grew and it grew and it grew. Like, it's called Panathēnea because it started as a thing for the Athenian tribes, but as it grew, it became something that was for all of the Hellenic world. So at the height of Panathēnea, people came from Asia Minor, from India, from Northern Africa, from Spain, from north of here, all came to Athens for a 12-day festival that was based on competition. The competition was core to it, but competition in everything. They competed in craftsmanship, they competed in engineering, in poetry, in music, in theater. They had boat races, they had chariot races, they had foot races, wrestling matches, right? So they had competition in technology, in culture, and in sports. But this particular type of ancient Greek competition where the explicit goal was to invent our future, right? They had boat races to discover faster boats so they could win the next naval battle. They competed in engineering to figure out, I'm guessing, how to build better aqueducts. And they competed in theater to evolve this, what was a brand new art form back then. They had just discovered this idea of theater, and they used competition to evolve that art form. And this is what I think modern Panathēnea should become again. And we'll use competition and connection. And of course, celebration, we'll get to that in a second, right? To help discover our future. Like, this is what an innovation festival is about. We all get together. We'll do it every year now because things move a little faster now than 2,500 years ago, right? They did it every 4 years back then. And then at the end of it, we'll have a delightful celebration, right? In ancient Panathēnea, I believe it was the goddess's birthday, Athena's birthday, of goddess of wisdom, of strategy, of creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship. Back then, the night before, the young people of Athens went to the top of the Acropolis, danced all night, and then on the day itself, this peplos arrived, a veil, a single cloth veil that has been a year weaving, and they built a procession behind the veil, went through town, and met the youth on top of the Acropolis, and they had a ceremony. They gave the veil to the goddess. There was a statue inside the temple. And then they feasted all day. I think they sacrificed 100 oxen. We probably will not bring that part back, right? But it was a really big party. In fact, I think, now I'm at the edge of my historical knowledge, but I think the Parthenon was built 100 years after the festival started. And that procession with the peplos is actually depicted on the frieze of the Parthenon. And we want to bring all of those things back. We will have a procession. We didn't have time to build it this year, but honestly, I think the potential, and we haven't even started this part yet, but just of that celebration alone, because of the historic connections and because Greeks are really good at parties. Like, I think the celebration at the end of Panathēnea itself, in 10 years, 5 years, will start rivaling the biggest parties in the world: Rio Carnival, the Mardi Gras in New Orleans, Burning Man, and Athena's birthday in Athens for Panathēnea.
And do you think we can be in 5 years or 10 years, we can be one of the best festivals, innovation festivals, multifaceted, let's say, innovation festivals in the world?
To me, look, there's no question. Like, the only thing that needs to happen here is for all of Greece to unite behind this vision. Like Greece did for the Olympics, like Greece has done for this first, I mean, we only had 5 months, but we haven't found a single company or VC or startup or governmental institute that wasn't just in love with this idea, right? And so everyone is pulling behind this idea of bringing back Panathēnea. And if that continues, there is no question that Greece will have the top innovation festival.
And as an investor, what do you think are the areas that you would invest from all the technology sectors or not, that you would invest as Lars?
Well, look, so we have 10 investments in Greece now, and they're very agnostic about subject.
Okay.
Like, my background is software,
yeah.
And when I started investing 10, 15 years ago, it was primarily in software. Like, you met one of my first investment on the stage here. The Canva founders came all the way from Australia, beamed into this 3D box, right? So they were one of my first investment. Software design, that's an area I know a little bit about, but increasingly, I invest in things where I get to learn a bunch. And so here in Greece, I've invested in a biotech company chasing a cure for Alzheimer's with a group of genetically engineered E. coli bacteria. I keep telling George, so he's the founder, right? I keep telling him, you know, solve this problem with Alzheimer's before I need the solution. It's like I get more and more interested in longevity things as I get older. I'm not sure if there's a connection, but I invested in Fastprint.
Okay.
Joanna she's a professor at the National Technical University, and 30 years of research has turned into a startup. They build a 3D printer that prints with human tissue. True science fiction, but actual science reality. It prints with human tissue, and there's a handful of companies doing this around the world, but I believe that Joanna and Fastprint will be the first to get an actual surgical procedure approved using a machine like this. And so they've picked bladder replacement. It's a very generic machine. It can print all kinds of things, but they're taking bladder replacement through the regulatory process. They're almost done with preclinical trials that if you get bladder cancer today, bladder comes out, you survive, which is great, but you end up with this bag on the side of your body that's a significant lowering of your quality of life. And if Joanna and her team pulls off what they've started, you will no longer need that. You will get the new bladder printed with this machine. It's a little more complicated than that, but again, I'm telling them, before I get bladder cancer, please continue, please finish.
Another important question for me is that we don't have here in Greece the culture of entrepreneurship that much. So, and I still remember the speech of the Angry Birds founder and the Slash founder.
Peter, yeah.
Yeah, that said that, I was in a theater in Helsinki and there was like 600 students, and I said, which of you would like to become, entrepreneurs? And there were only 3 hands. And it's exactly the same case here in Greece. So I would like to ask you, what would you say to a student who is now in a university and he has some, shadow idea of doing something of his own? How would you, what advice would you give him to or her to break the fear?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, first of all, thanks to Peter. So Peter is the founder of Slash in Finland, and the organizational structure we're building, a non-profit staffed entirely by Greek students and new grads. That's 100% how Peter started Slash, and he is a mentor and an enormous source of inspiration. I think none of this would have happened without Peter. But your question, so a lot of times what's holding people back is a fear of failure, honestly, and it's a really powerful force in a human, the fear of failure. But how do you direct that fear of failure? Do you direct it to working really hard and continue and persevere and persist and never giving up, or do you challenge into not starting at all? And that's really the shift you need to make. And part of it, that's an internal mentality shift. But part of it is a shift in the society around you to start accepting that failure is part of the learning process, right? If you want to build a rocket that gets to the moon or Mars, like, you have to accept that a bunch of your early attempts will blow up. And everything in life, the work ends up with you falling over. And of course, as parents, we encourage the child to try again. And that thing, to encourage people to try again when they fail, that's what society needs to have in order to support that young person you were talking about.
Now, I have a very serious question. How is it living with a Greek wife?
Look. Honestly, I feel so privileged. I feel I'm the luckiest man. Don't tell her I said this, but I do tell her this every day. I feel I'm intensely privileged. We actually met 35 years ago, fell in love instantly when we were students in Scotland. You don't know this, but I moved to Greece the first time in 1992.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, in pursuit of the same Greek goddess. Didn't work out back then, and we took a 20-year break, but now we made it work 15 years ago. And it just gets better and better, not just between us, but the fact that she finally, allowed me to move to her country. I think those first 25 years was her testing me before she go, okay, fine, we can move to Greece, right? But look at what we get to work on.
That is
this is an epic, historic, I'm getting goosebumps now, right? Like where else in the world do you get to reimagine an ancient festival into what I believe will become of historic proportion, of worldwide importance. And I feel I'm so lucky.
And final question, what would you say to an international innovator about Greece? What do you like about Greece?
Greece on fire. Greece a rocket ship just taking off. It's it has delightful chaos. Cities run down. but things are starting to happen here, and I think if you have that kind of mindset, you know, sometimes you have a big city like London or New York, there's that neighborhood where suddenly it often starts with artists and coffee shops and galleries moving to that area, right? And then the innovators and the entrepreneurs come, and then there is the funky part of town where new things are happening. And I feel like all of Athens has that property right now, and it's just starting to happen. In fact, Russian entrepreneur friend of mine living in Berlin, he heard about Panathēnea, and he's like, hey Lars, remember me? We used to like hang out in LA, and he's like, I just bought an apartment in Athens. Oh, really? Why? Yep, because I'm in Berlin, and I started noticing my artist friends are moving from Berlin to Athens.
What?
And I thought, I should check out Athens. And I went, I just like loved this. Now I bought an apartment, I'm moving with family and my startup, and like this is starting to happen. Like the next decade of Athens, again, if we all pull together behind us, will be quite exciting, I think. Not without challenges, but quite exciting.
Amazing. It's a very, very big honor that you are here, that you have become a Hellene, and that you're pulling off such a huge initiative. Thank you very much.
I have never been prouder to be a wannabe Greek than seeing your country pull this together. And again, the young team, five students
5 months,
pulled this whole
students.
thing together in 5 months.
Crazy.
And like I'm telling everyone, if these 5 young people are representative of the youth of your country, Greece has an incredible future. And I mean, they're so talented, so hardworking, but what really blows my mind is how bold they are. Like this is a big, scary project. I'm terrified. And these young people like, we got this, Lars. We got this, man. And like we were talking earlier, like they're like, can this be over yet so I can start working on something even better for next year?
Amazing.
It's crazy.
Thank you so much.